Namaste. Patanjali Yoga Sutras start with the first sutra, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. A few things about this particular sutra we need to give before we proceed further. When you look at Patanjali Yoga Sutras where he starts Atha Yoga Anushasanam, similar kind of text that we have Brahma Sutras and Narada Bhakti Sutra. In the Brahma Sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa, whereas in Narada Bhakti Sutra he says Atha Athato Bhaktin Vyakhyasyaamaha. Three different kind of expressions. One is called as Vyakhya, there is Jignasa, and here it is Anushasanam. The difference between these three are, in the case of Brahma Sutra, it is about the jnana, about the knowledge. And knowledge is basically that you need to intellectualize, you need to logically look at that, there is a rationale behind it. And that way, when it is discussed with the jignasa, that means you use your intellect to understand whatever that has been discussed later on by Badarayana in the Brahma Sutras. Whereas in case of Bhakti Sutras, he says Atato Bhakti Vyakhya Syama. It is basically that there is something that you have unique experience in your day-to-day life. And out of that experiences that you have already in the day-to-day life, when we try to put them together, understand them by embellishing them, and that's what is Vyakhya. Vyakhya means basically that you elaborate and expand it, and then you can get the details of it, the depth of it, the understanding that is there, and that's what is bhakti. Whereas here, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Anushasana is basically the law, rule, or the way that order. So it is there available. A creation follows a particular rule, particular law, and particular order, and understanding that is what is called as Anushasanam. And here he starts with the sutra Athaha, basically means hereafter. Now let us proceed in that sense that Atha Yoga Anushasanam he has given. The very sutra Atha gives us an idea that there is already some discussion that went on. And beyond that, whatever the discussion is there, that's what we are talking about. But this is the first sutra at the beginning of this particular text. So, what is that which is discussed about, or what is the foundation that is created for a person who is an inquiry about this Shastra that is given? In this connection, we need to understand that these two types of Darshana Shastras, one is the Sankhya Darshana and Yoga Darshana, they are supposed to be pairs, which means basically that Sankhya Darshana, we understand that, and then after Sankhya Darshana, what we follows is the Yoga Darshana. But at the same time, there is another important idea is that do you mean to say that we have to have the knowledge of Sankhya Darshana before we go for the Yoga Darshana? It is not necessary, but we need to understand what is the content of the Sankhya Darshana so that you can come to the understanding of Yoga Darshana. Now, these two are paired together because of simple reason that Sankhya Darshana talks about the material world, manifested world outside. The whole manifested world, Kapila Muni, in his own way, he made people to understand so that it can be useful. Like the way various gunas come from Sankhya, dhatus come from Sankhya. So when we understand the nature in that way, then a lot of secrets of the nature will be revealed to us. Make the nature to understand the simple, Sankhya Darshana is given so that we can understand what is uh, the depth of this material manifest world that is there outside. That is what Sankhya Darshana gives us. But then the whole idea is that whatever the manifest material that is there, it has come from some unmanifest, some deep inside, some subtle level. It has come to the manifestation. So it is necessary that we need to explore into that what is behind what is unmanifest, which is responsible for that. It's a very simple common sense that we could think of. Like, for example, when a child is born, we conduct the birthday of the child on the day the child comes out of the mother's womb. But we all very know clearly that before the child is born, 9 months, the child is there in mother's womb. And before that, the child was there in father and the mother, and all that comes out in the form of a child. So therefore, that there is so much of preparation before the child comes into the world outside. Same way, when you see a plant, you see that it is there inside in the seed, unmanifest way. However much that you try to expand the vision of that particular seed, you will not be able to get the details of the tree that is there present. It may be in a different form, in a subtle form, in a form which is not available for our observation. We know very clearly that there is a lot of journey that has happened in the seed before the tree comes to the manifest level outside. Similarly, that when we see that a simple wave that comes on the ocean, how much of preparation that is there behind under the ocean so that waves come up. All these analysis analogies will give us the idea that there is something which is behind the whole creation itself, and we need to explore into that particular creation. So, having accepted the creation outside, and somebody wants to explore into what is there behind this creation, and for that, this journey starts. Now, here afterwards, the journey that what we are making Natha is a journey into that subtle phase, into the phase that is there behind the manifested world. But then it is Yoga Shastra because basically the individual who is making this particular journey is a sample of this creative world outside. The nature of the world outside and also the individual, one and the same part. Only thing is that we always consider that human being is separate, nature is separate, or the manifest world is separate. We are only observing that the world that is there in front of us. We never realize that we are the part of it unless until somebody wise person tells us that you are also part of the nature. Just as the plants, just as the animals, just as the birds, all the other creatures that are there in this universe, the same way that you are. We share the same manifested world as like the whole thing that is there. Is it not so that you breathe the air which is there outside and we are made out of the soil in the form of food it goes into us? We take this temperature, we take the heat from the world outside. So therefore, that means to say you are also part of the universe. But only thing is that you cannot get into the subtle aspect of the world outside, whether it's behind the seed, to go into what is there inside the seed, or behind the human being that is there before even born. So all those things are difficult to get into, impossible to get into. Only way that we can go to the subtle aspect is going into ourselves. So therefore, this hereafter that we are trying to make a journey to go to see that whatever that is there is outside the world, but then behind that we are at the real root cause of it, at the root depth of it, and from there the origin has started. And from there into that, the journey that we make is what is supposed to be the athaha. Therefore, now hereafter we go into this particular journey. So when Patanjali gives us this idea, athaha yoga anushasanam, yoga is something which is we are going to talk about, explore about. Anushasanam is a law, is a rule that is there. It's already there available. Only thing is we try to understand that rule. We are not going to create any rule. Patanjali is not giving us a yoga as a fresh something. It is there already right from the beginning of the creation. Patanjali came about 2000 years ago, 3000 years ago. We are reading it today. But the reference of yoga is there in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, which means to say that the thought of yoga, the idea of yoga has been there in the nature. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that I have given this knowledge to the sun god. He, while explaining to the Arjuna, he tells that. One might wonder that Krishna is 40-year-old standing there in the battlefield. How could he have given this particular knowledge to sun god? Because sun is supposed to be billions of years. But it's a very beautiful explanation. It's a figurative way that Krishna is telling that, like the way that I am cause for this creation, you are also cause for this creation. And at the beginning of the creation of this yoga is there. That means yoga is as old as the creation itself. That means these laws are there in the creation much before. Like the way that we can say that geometry laws are available in the nature already. Only thing is Euclid has put them in the form of formulae. Similarly, the law or the rule of yoga, discipline of yoga, is always there in the nature. Only thing is Patanjali has given the rules for this in the form of sutras. Just as the way that the geometry is scientific, logical, and it is one leading to the other, one giving the explanation to the other, the same way that Yoga Sutras are also very logical and very scientific, one taking to the next, and all those things. But only the difference is that the laws that are there in the outside in the material world, like the way the geometrical laws, you can test the laboratories, the world outside. You can test in the lab in the world outside. Whereas what Patanjali talks about is the one where the laboratory is yourself. You go deep inside. You are such a complex personality. You are the body, mind, consciousness, index, and all, and intelligence and mind. So many things that are there. And then this complex personality that you need to investigate, explore. And that's what is the journey. It has to have that amount of courage, wanting to really go into that. One more extra information that is necessary in case of this journey, which is not necessary in the outside world journey, is you really don't have to have a faith in the outward, in the world outside. Somebody said that you do the experiments and then you can find out. It's very simple. Whereas here, you need, already somebody gave it, but in order to explore that, you need to have what is called a shraddha. It is a word which is much more subtler, deeper, and pristine than the simple faith. Because faith is verifiable, and so that you can have the faith. But here, you need to go inwards. What you require is shraddha, something like faith, and that will help you to proceed inwards. So, this faith is something which is a prerequisite in the case of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras because he says that you are deep inside that you have a mind which is a consciousness which is free from this mind, free from the intellect. And now, as far as that we know in the world that we interact, there is mind, there is intellect, all these things are there. How can there be a state which is free from all those things? So I might dismiss the whole thing. And what is necessary for me is not to dismiss, not only not to dismiss, but not go with suspicion. In fact, the science always insists that you go into the inquiry of science with suspicion, whereas don't go with the faith. In yoga, it is different. It is that you cannot go with the suspicion because suspicion itself acts as a barrier. In order to penetrate that kind of a thing, you need to have what is called a shraddha. Therefore, atha yoga anushasanam. There is a law, there is a rule, that is what is the creation. In the creative world outside, the laws are given by Sankhya, and the creation, before even it comes to the manifest level, what is there, the laws that are there, is given in the form of Yoga Sutras. Mind, intellect, and all those things which we call it as chitta. Chitta does not mean only mind, but it is the whole complexity that is there is called as chitta. And behind this chitta is Swarupa. You are there, and outside is what is the material world. In order to go to the exploration of yourself, that's when we need to really have that Shraddha so that the journey makes possible. But there's another very important aspect that we need to look into that. That is that before even sadhana pada, samadhi pada, sadhana pada comes in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, samadhi pada comes. That means to say, whatever that he gives in the samadhi pada, they are not the resultant of sadhana. They are not resultant of the spiritual practice. It's only when you do the meditation, it is only when you do the Ashtanga Yoga, which later on Patanjali touches upon, or Kriya Yoga, then only you get into the knowledge of Samadhi. That's not the idea. The idea of Samadhi Pada is that he first lays out the whole map that's there deep inside within you, whether you know it or not. Sages have seen it, sages have known about it, and it is there. Not only it is there, it must be there in your experience. If you had not there in your experience, that you would not have compared it with the experience that later on when somebody goes through that kind of a thing. So therefore, essentially, that it's already there. And once in a while you are experiencing that. Once in a while, accidentally you are experiencing that. Like the way that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he saw the flock of cranes that were flying across the black, dark sky, he saw into a total transported into a different state of consciousness, different state of being. Everybody thought that he died. And then they carried him home, but then he became jubilant, happy. He didn't even know as a child, Gadadhar, that something like that experience was there. But later, when he started spiritual sadhana and all those things, and when he was in the Dakshineshwar temple, and he entered into the Nirvikal Samadhi with the touch of Totapuri. At that point of time, when he came out, somebody asked, "What is this experience like?" He said, "This is the same experience I had when I was a child." That statement clearly gives that all these things are within us and we are exploring it. It is like the way that a diamond is there hidden inside the stone, but there is so much of stone that is there outside in so many different directions that it does not allow you to see, recognize that there is some diamond that is there inside. Only a jeweler will know that what is the way that he can cut the stone so that whatever that jewel that is there inside hidden, the beautiful thing that comes out. It's a small little story that is there in the case of Michelangelo, that it seems one day he was going and suddenly at some place he suddenly came across a shop where there's a huge stone was lying down there, white stone. And then he asked that shop fellow that how much do you sell the stone for? The shop fellow was shocked and surprised. He said, Michelangelo, that I was just thinking that stone is sitting there as an obstacle in my shop. And I wanted to pay money so that somebody can throw away this particular stone, lift the stone away so that my shop someplace will be clear. But on the other hand, that you are coming here and asking for how much I pay, how much I charge for this stone, I'm really surprised. What is that you have seen in the stone? Michelangelo said that if give me this stone, I will invite you a year later to come to my place and you can see about this particular stone. The shopfellow was too eager to give the stone to Michelangelo and then he took it there. And then later on, a year later, that he came to the shopfellow and then invite him to his workshop. Where he went there, he saw a very beautiful white stone marble stone statue was sitting there with Mary sitting and then Jesus was in her lap. And that was a very famous sculpture that is there. When he looked at sculpture, he was so fascinated. He said, "Wow, such a beautiful sculpture." And Mary looked so real, as if somebody is sitting there. Jesus Christ's pain you could see on his face and all that. How did you get it? Where did you get it? He said, "No, I cut it out of stone." "Wow, you cut it out of stone? Where was that stone? How did you cut it?" He said, "The same stone that I have taken from your shop. I brought it here, and out of which that I carved it. He could not believe. He said, that means to say, when you saw the stone in my shop, you realized that this particular stone can be cut into this? No. In fact, when I saw the stone at your shop, the stone, I could already see this image inside that stone. And they were crying. Mary and Jesus were crying. Please remove all the overburden from us so that we will manifest outside. So therefore, that I pleaded you, I got the stone, and I removed whatever that is overburden so that the image came out. It is the same thing that we have the divinity within us, we have the consciousness within us, but we are so much overburdened by so many things that are there outside. And that journey we are going to make. And it's all about the world outside, this overburden. So when you withdraw from the world outside, it is not just only you shut off the light from outside, shut off the sounds outside, and lock up yourself in a room. That's not the question. But there is so much of outside world that is there inside you. And that journey is something which is very carefully done. It is much more carefully you have to do this journey, much more careful than what you chisel the stone to remove whatever that is overburdened, to see that the image comes out. One small little chisel wrong blow that you give can actually damage this particular image. How preciously that you need to do it. Particularly when you go to finer and finer details of this particular statue, you have to be absolutely extraordinarily careful. The same way, this journey also is something which is very carefully to be done. But it is there already, that's there within you. The stone image is there, the beautiful image of Jesus Christ and Mother Mary is already there within us. That's why, are you prepared for this journey? Are you motivated to go to this journey? That Shraddha, that preparedness to go to motivation for this journey is the idea of Atha Yoga Anushasana. How much Patanjali inspires us to go into this journey by just one simple sutra he gives. And later on, in the following sutras, Patanjali gives us what are the various stages that are there inside you, and stage by stage, step by step, when you have come out of the clutches of these levels, that you have that experience. A child is not yet corrupted by the world outside. Therefore, in child, that these states of experience of samadhi is already there in a very natural way. They're all there. But only thing is, an adult, when the child grows up to an adult, yes, he also carried a lot of dust on him. So therefore, it has to be removed. Therefore, this whole idea of Atha Yoga Anushasana gives us such a tremendous amount of confidence that whatever the samadhi state that our sages talked about is already there within us, and the inspiration that you get from this Patanjali or all these sages is inspiration that makes you to prepare Athaha, and then Anushasana is whatever that is systematic way it is there, and systematic way that you need to uncover these things step by step, little by little. The subtler and subtler that you go, more and more careful that you need to do. Only when you do that, you get into this wonderful experience of samadhi, which he Patanjali talks about. So therefore, Atha Yoga Anushasana is a tremendous amount of responsibility that Patanjali gives us that sutra, motivates us to go in that particular journey. Here, there is no question of it is any, but it's a Sanatana Dharma. That means it is coming from the most ancient times, as I said, ever since the creation started. It's beyond all the caste and creed, beyond all the religious boundaries, beyond any gods and goddesses, beyond any kind of stigma, any kind of blind faith. It is something, all that what we require is a Shraddha with which the journey is made. So, Atha Yoga Anushasana